All right, we are back. It is Monday night. You guys know we do these every Monday and Wednesday. Get here on the live and run down the macro and all the fun things that you guys want to talk about when it comes to digital assets, estate planning, taxes, setting up structures, where we're at, where we're going, all the pieces to the puzzle. I have a good one for you tonight. I've got some really, I think, some good analogies for you guys, and I want to go over. It's actually a little bit. I have a little bit of a list tonight to go over before we get into the questions. And I don't know. Let me look and see if I have any super chats from Wednesday last week. I have one super chat from last week that we will get into before we get into the ones tonight. So where are we at? Well, the U.S. and Japan are now coordinating efforts to intervene in the currency market in order to continue to prop up the reverse carry trade. You know things are on their last leg when now they're coming out and telling everybody. Like Bessent is saying, look, like we've had to coordinate this. Trump has made comments on it. This is much scarier than a lot of people are portraying it to be. So if this doesn't tell you that this is a big problem and it's really serious, I don't know what will. There are a lot of people out there that say that this is going to be a controlled unwind and it's not going to be that big a deal, and it's already unwound, or this isn't going to be an issue. Which again, everybody's entitled to their opinion. Listen to multiple people. I'm just one person on the internet, and that's probably a good time for my disclaimer. Nothing here is financial advice. It's only for entertainment and educational purposes. You should always speak with a financial advisor, other advisors, CPAs, attorneys before making any tax, legal, or financial decisions. And any of the opinions that I share, and I have that I share on here, are not the opinions of Digital Ascension Group or any of its subsidiaries. So with all that said, I do encourage people to go listen to other people. I am one perspective that's out there. But I will say that I try to look across all the other intelligent people that I hold in high regard and put together the puzzle, because a lot of them have blinders on. They know their specific piece of the puzzle. And then I try to take all those puzzle pieces and put together the bigger puzzle, which is really the macro. So what's up, man? Appreciate you. All right. So on that, they've now intervened, and in a big way, they've strengthened the yen. This is what we've been waiting on, just so you guys know. I thought it was going to be they raise interest rates and it was going to move aggressively. It's already starting to move aggressively. I haven't looked at the yen. Actually, I've got it here on the screen. So it is trending up. We haven't seen it continue to collapse here. But what Bessent has done and the US have done is they've allowed Japan to post their treasuries from the Bank of Japan as collateral in the repo market in order to be able to borrow dollars to then sell those and buy yen in order to be able to prop up their currency. And we've already seen it appreciate against the dollar, again, pretty rapidly. And so this is the start. Whether you guys want to believe it or not, that's okay. It's going to get much, much worse because now there's additional leverage. Before, it was a lot of leverage. I mean, it's close to $10 trillion that the Bank of Japan has allowed people to borrow with, almost no interest over the last couple decades. That has been put to work in markets. It's all over the world. There's tons of leverage built into all the markets all over the world. Doesn't matter where you put your money, there's leverage. So when this does unwind, everybody's going to have to sell those assets. We've been through this many times, but for those that are new here, the reverse carry trade is basically there's a margin call. People are upside down on their loans. And when they rush to pay those loans back, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that it gets worse and worse and worse for the people that are later to that game. This will add additional pressure to that, and it could cause clearing delays. I wonder what could solve clearing delays in the currency market. So they're posting their bonds, the Japanese bonds, as collateral with repo over here in the US. They're borrowing dollars, they're selling dollars for yen in order to be able to buy the yen and support their own currency. And what this does, it softens the blow for a little bit here. So the biggest concern is the treasury market. It's the bedrock. It is the backbone of the financial market. If that goes, we're done. So, and the US knows that, Japan knows that, and that's why they haven't allowed the reverse carry trade to unwind. Tomorrow is the 2-year anniversary of when it started to unwind in 2024. So we'll see if anything happens this week. There seems to be A lot of people out there on the charts and other people talking about the next, 7 to 10 days, we could see some pretty significant action. So, but they've pledged that as collateral. They're borrowing dollars. And what this does is it keeps those treasuries from being sold onto the market and spiking our yields. Because if Japan dumps all of their treasuries to swap to dollars to buy the yen, then all those treasuries flood onto the market. Right now, we don't have buyers for those treasuries because we still don't have guidance from the Stablecoin Act. The OCC, the Fed, the Treasury, FDIC, they haven't come out with their guidelines. So banks are still on the sideline, not issuing stablecoins at scale. Until that happens, which they've been very methodical about this, I told you guys, I think that they're going to put that in place and then they'll let this go because we need demand domestically for those treasuries. Otherwise, the Fed has to print more currency and then we go into hyperinflation. We don't want that either. But if the bond yields spike, that makes it more difficult for people to borrow money. If you want to get a mortgage or refinance your house or go to the bank, business loans, all that stuff, much, much more expensive. It also makes it more expensive for the US to service their own debt to those counterparties that are holding it, right? So they need stability in the bond market. And this is a way to mitigate the risk of Japan liquidating those treasuries because they're posting them as collateral. We talk about this all the time, borrow against your assets instead of selling them if you think that they're going to appreciate in value. But that doesn't mean other people won't. There are a lot of other people that borrowed yen to swap to dollars to buy US treasuries to print, the spread there. If they borrowed at 1% and you're making 5%, they're really happy with that. That's basically free money, that 4% spread that they're making. That's contracting. Bond yields in Japan, as those rise, so as people sell these Japanese bonds and they raise interest rates, you're going to see those rates climb. And eventually they're going to be close to what we have here in the US, and then people will be dumping US bonds in order to be able to buy treasuries. So if they're not dumping treasuries, they're borrowing against them, their bond yields still rise. The linchpin here, two things. We need stablecoin clarity around how to issue stablecoins for the banks. And we are going to see a spike in oil. That spike in oil is going to be massive at this point. I speculate, I don't know for sure, I have no way to know this, but if we were, the US, to stop exporting oil to the rest of the world because our reserves are too low, they're the lowest that they've been since 1983. And you can imagine how much more infrastructure and energy is required to facilitate business here in the US than in 1983. So at some point, we're going to have to stop exporting. Right now, we're the largest exporter of oil in the world. Both those straits are now shut down. This bad situation. So at some point, we're going to have to restrict that. That means oil is going to spike. We'll probably be okay here in the US because we can make our own oil and refine it and do all that stuff. And we also took Venezuela. So we kind of mitigated that risk for ourselves. The rest of the world is in for hurting on energy. And that is going to put Japan in the corner where they're going to have to raise interest rates. That is the piece that's, I still think, going to unwind this whole deal. And it is going to be predicated on oil spiking. And now that there's additional leverage and they're not selling those treasuries, they're posting them as collateral. If the collateral on either side were to drop in value anywhere when there's leverage, you have to post more collateral. Otherwise, you get liquidated, right? Like you guys know that with margin. If you're playing with margin in crypto, you got to post a certain amount of collateral. If it moves too much, they ask you to post more collateral. If you borrow against your assets and they fall in value, same thing. So, and that's the risk, right? When you're doing either one of those things. So you need to understand that. But I want to simplify this for you guys because, I was talking to my son this weekend, and if you can't explain the global financial system or what's going on to a child, you probably don't really understand it yourself. And so for him, I had to create an analogy that, like, he doesn't have all this context. We do a lot of education here and in the mastermind. You guys, probably have become much more familiar with macroeconomics and how all this stuff works in the financial system than you were before you started watching this channel and other people are investing in crypto. So for him, I said, hey, look, okay, imagine the total global financial system is an upside down pyramid, which it pretty much is. The whole system is held up by US treasuries. It is the little pointy point, the bottom of the pyramid. And then there's derivatives and other things that are built off of that. And the derivatives market is the top part. It's the huge part. It's the biggest market in the world. If US treasuries were to have problems during this scenario, and I'm not saying the Fed goes insolvent or, bad things happen. The US has defaulted on our promises twice in our history. But if that were to occur again, treasuries are the bedrock of this. And if there's not something underneath that in order to be able to support everything, like I said before, it is a Mad Max scenario. Markets collapse globally. We move into a depression. It's going to be a bad situation for everybody. So they need to swap that out. They need to swap the bottom piece of the pyramid out. The analogy I used in the mastermind this morning, and again, I'm oversimplifying this to be able to provide a visual and an analogy for people. But I don't know if you've ever watched, most people would have watched this on here, Indiana Jones, when he's searching for the treasure and it's on that like pedestal and he's swapping out the sack with the thing that he's trying to get. That's how I view this game. And that's oversimplified. I do think that XRP will end up premium collateral, be the backbone of the financial system, all those things. And we're starting to see that with some of the announcements that Ripple's making, and we'll get into those here in a minute. So for the life of me, I could not figure out why they tokenized the treasury market first. Like, that's the most liquid market in the world. What possible benefit would tokenizing treasuries have that they don't already have? Okay, you could trade them, a little bit more outside those hours, but they have repo, like I said, and fractional treasuries. Maybe, the people that are playing in that market are big players. It's not like they can't afford the treasuries that they're buying. The reason they did that, and the reason that those settle on the XRPL already through Ondo and the other people that have tokenized treasuries, is so that this liquidity layer is already underneath it for when all this happens. Like, I had this epiphany in the last 24 hours. Because like I said, I have been racking my brain on why would they tokenize treasuries first? There's so many other things that are completely illiquid that blockchain and smart contracts and all this stuff would be a much better solution for. Why would they start there? Because they had to. They knew that this was coming and they needed some way to be able to slide in XRP and the XRPL underneath treasuries for when there's a situation like this that comes about because of the reverse carry trade and all this leverage that's in the system. Mind blowing. So that's where I think we're at. And hopefully that's a good, analogy and visual for you guys to be able to look at how the global financial system is built. Treasuries are the crux of everything that we do. And if those default or there's an issue with them, then we have to have something else that's a bedrock or more solid foundation to be able to prop everything up. Now, they've got to drive a lot of liquidity into XRP for it to be in that position. We now have the ETFs and other financial products being issued for it. We're working on some of those ourselves at Digital Ascension Group. And so, it's cool to see this playing out real time. And just like anybody else, I would have rather it happened yesterday, but this new development that has taken place now really just puts a spotlight on it. And there are going to be people that start to deleverage because they're going to see this coming. Oil is already a problem. I'm not special. Okay. There are quants and extremely intelligent people that are out there that are watching this much closer than they were just a few weeks ago. Jeff Park, as an example, CIO over there at Bitwise. He's been putting out some tweets that are very interesting here lately. The one that was most recent, he asked, what's the common thing between Tether, MicroStrategy, and the Pokemon company? I think that they're all bubble that are built on leverage and speculation. But that's, aside from the fact. So anyway, it's not just me saying it anymore. Michael Gade has been screaming this from the rooftops as long as, longer than me, actually. I just want to give a little praise to Michael. He was talking about this. He was one of the people that I found that understood the carry trade before I did 2 years ago when I put together my theory. So if anybody sees his stuff out there on Twitter, he's an OG. I know that this has kind of been popularized by, my theory and all the stuff that I've put out, but he was here as soon as me or before me. So with all that said, that's where we're at on the macro. Things are teetering here. I do expect another intervention in the currency market in the not too distant future. And I do think that that's going to be potentially them again, posting their bonds as collateral, borrowing dollars, buying yen. When we get below 150, 155, that's where the magic's going to happen. Everybody always wants ranges and numbers and stuff to follow and look at. It's really about the percentage move, but we've already moved a good bit here. And if it continues in a short period of time, that's the problem. When things are moving aggressively, people are going to get scared. People are emotional. They're going to see that their spreads are collapsing and they are going to move. They're going to sell whatever liquid assets they have, whether it's treasuries, liquid credit instruments, or the stock market or other equities, in order to be able to get the currency that they need to swap back through the currency market to the yen to repay their loans. And this is a band-aid, but it also adds additional leverage into the system that I think was going to make things worse when all of it does unwind, inevitably. So that's where that's at. I told you guys we'd talk about Ripple. So they've made some really interesting investments. I have to pull up their tweet here, but Zillow, let me see what the other ones were. Liquidity, yeah, was it Liquidity? Ripple. All right, they put out a tweet earlier today. Here it is, yeah. Zillow, Liquido, and then they did issuance, and they talked about Ivana investors tokenizing their US dollar liquidity fund. So why would they make those investments? Why does that matter? This is the downstream stuff. This is the tokenization of private funds and private equity and private credit and all the things that are not listed on the stock market. And the reason that I'm making that inference is Zillow is a registered transfer agent agency. So if you don't know what a transfer agent is, if you wanted to create a securities market in order to be able to change title of stocks and equities and other things, you need a transfer agent. They're the agent of record. So they determine, who's participating, how much they hold. They have all of those things documented, and this is on chain. This is on the XRPL. So this is pretty cool. So if you believe that capital markets globally will move onto the XRPL, like I do, you need some way to be able to move private markets onto the XRPL also, in order for those to then transition to public markets later on. So these are the downstream companies that they're investing in. Liquidio is very interesting. So, right now, Ripple has Ripple Prime. You can post collateral there with them, whether it's RLUSD or XRP, and take that and then invest it in other capital markets. They can't do that in private equity. They don't lend against private equity. But if you could tokenize private equity in liquidity pools or other mechanisms on the XRPL, or you tokenized a fund on the XRPL that was generating returns, right now, you don't get liquidity against that. You're going to get cash flow from it, which is great as long as you're invested in it until you sell your position, which again, the lockup period in private markets is extended compared to traditional markets. There's still some circumstances, like when they file an S1, there can be a lockup period on your stock, but that's where this is headed. The tokenization and collateralization of private markets. So if you're invested in a private fund, an SPV, a private equity fund, a REIT, well, REITs are a little bit more liquid, a private real estate fund, something like that, you would then be able to post that position as collateral, have the transfer agent of record there. They'll still need an ATS and a broker-dealer license and some other stuff. And if you guys want to go look at Propto or Reclosure over there in Ireland, they are another investment that Ripple made a few years ago. Talked to Steve a few times at Swell. And I think the combination of all these things is very interesting for the direction that Ripple's moving. One of their employees put out Ripple Capital Markets when he was talking, reposted this tweet. That's where this goes. So they're moving their way downstream, and that also tells me that they're probably already done with traditional markets. They've figured out that they are going to be the winner there. They've got the connections, the partnerships, the integrations, all of that stuff for the broader markets, and now they're working their way downstream. And I say broader markets. Private markets globally are somewhere between 15 and $20 trillion as the total market cap globally. Total addressable market, TAM. That's what I was looking for. Which is smaller than the stock market, $600 trillion plus globally, and the treasury market and derivatives and all these other things. But I find that very interesting. We wrote a book called Wealth in Numbers. If you want to go check that out on Amazon, talks about SPVs, how to use Reg D funds here in the U.S. in order to be able to raise capital and create private investments if you want to run one, or the things you should be looking out for if you are investing in them. And we do have some about globally, but most of it refers to the regulation here in the U.S. But I found that very interesting because it gives me a clear signal that, and they said this in the tweet, a clear signal that institutions are ready to move. It's coming. We're going to see the tokenization of the broader markets through the end of this year in 2026. And then we're going to see the downstream markets, the private equity, private real estate, private credit, all that stuff probably in 2027. And Ripple's normally a year ahead when they make investments, a year or two ahead when they make investments and acquisitions of where the market's headed. So hopefully you get the gist of that and understand where that's going. I don't know if you guys own any private investments. I'm sure that you will, post price appreciation. You might be accredited or a qualified purchaser. Or maybe even some of you will be APs and have at least 100 million under your management. And depending on those credentials on the XRPL associated with your wallet, you might have the ability to participate in different ecosystems or opportunities based on your digital identity and your credentials. I actually made a full video about that that's going to be posted probably in the next 24 hours if you guys want to check that out. Talks about institutional DeFi and what that's actually going to look like when bridging the gap between traditional finance and DeFi in a regulated way, and how I think about things and what I think it should look like in the Clarity Act if they ever get that across the line. And that's probably a good segue into that. We are 4 days away from August recess here. Trump is encouraging Congress to stick around and not go to recess. But knowing the Democrats and where things sit, I don't know if that's going to happen. He wants the SAVE Act passed. He said that he's not going to be signing any other legislation into law until that act is passed. People are talking about marrying or combining the Clarity Act with the SAVE Act in order to be able to get it across the line. Still fighting over ethics in that because of Trump's involvement with crypto and his family and Senator Warren and all the other BS that's going on over there. I'm, again, not optimistic. Unless there is a significant catalyst the next 4 days here, I'm going to say it's going to be after midterms that they revisit this. And that is unfortunate because I do think the entire industry does need clarity. But good thing is the SEC and the CFTC have both come out and said that they will issue crypto guidance if Congress cannot get it done. So the things that have clarity, maybe like an XRP from the lawsuit with Ripple and the SEC, probably stand to do pretty well if the SEC were to issue guidance and not have the Clarity Act passed by Congress. So we'll see how it plays out. Again, I've moved my assessment back down to 98% that we're not going to get it done before midterms. Or the appreciation of XRP. But there's a 2% chance. So you're telling me there's a chance. I'm telling you there's a very slim chance that this could happen. But I personally am not betting on that. All right. And then the last fun thing that I have for you guys before we get into the questions tonight, and I've rambled on for more than 20 minutes now, so I appreciate you hanging out and listening. We have a new promotion at Digital Ascension Group. If you have 25,000 XRP, you now have the capability to onboard with DAG Wealth and get your assets over into institutional custody at Anchorage. And we have the yield products coming in September that we're working on. We're going to be able to launch a couple of those. I told you guys about those last week. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But if you do have, a lot of people we've received messages. I've got 30, I've got 40, I've got 49, I've got 47. People want their assets to be held somewhere safe. Cold wallets are great. Exchanges are, exchanges. I use exchanges like a restroom. Get in there, do your business, and get out. Or public restroom, excuse me. There's nothing wrong with being diversified, holding your assets in a couple different places. You probably want to do that, but we want to be an option for people. If you do have at least 25,000 XRP and you want your assets held at Anchorage, insured, segregated, bankruptcy remote, work with an advisor over there to be able to actually talk to you about your crypto and the risks in this space and help you navigate all of that. You can go check it out. It's at dag.com. This will be publicly announced on Wednesday. I'm going to give it to you guys a little bit early. So just be aware of that. And I'm sure I'll get questions on it tonight. It's the regular fees. It's $1,000 to onboard. You know, we got to pay for all the costs to onboard, KYC, KYB, Anchorage, set up the account, all of that. And then it's only for 1 month. So thank you for pointing that out. It's just the next 30 days here. So September 1st is the cutoff for this. It is a 30-day promotion that we are running. So if you want to participate in that, again, $1,000 onboarding fee. The minimum per month over there is $100 a month. So it's normally a percentage. There's an AUM fee depending on how much you hold with us. It's normally 2% of anything less than $5 million. But we stop that at $100. So just know that those are the costs associated with it before looking to move over there. But like I said, we've had a lot of people basically look at it like insurance on their crypto. You pay your car insurance, your house insurance, all these other things. If you want your crypto insured up to $100 million and have beneficiaries on the account, the advisory, access to products to be able to put them to work and earn interest and a yield of returns on those, we got all of that coming. And you would want to be over there before those products are released in order to be able to participate in them, because we do have a limited capacity on the first run here. So again, not to incite FOMO. It's not right for everybody. Not everybody's suitable. You should make your own decision based on your position. But like I said, we've had a lot of people ask about it. And so we are dropping that for the next 30 days. Or post PA, it's going to be $500,000 in order to be able to work with us in total portfolio value. So that's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you got a good update on where the market's at, what Ripple's doing, and the new promotion that we have. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump into the questions. Again, appreciate you taking time out of your Monday to come hang out with me. Please like, subscribe, share, hype it if you're over there on YouTube. And I will grab the first super chat that was emailed to me, and then we'll jump into the ones from tonight. This person says, Big Jake, how are you, sir? I finally got Uphold account on the app after 2 months of patiently waiting. What time frame is Uphold looking at to get a bank account established on the app? Is that automatic, or does a request need to be processed on my end? Thank you, Dan. Appreciate the question. So we do have people coming through. Finally, it's starting to move a little bit faster. Uphold is doing a good job over there, getting people on the platform on the DAG app. If you want to manage your LLC and get access to a bank account, be able to trade crypto, all inside that. So it makes it super simple to make sure that you're meeting your meeting minutes and board resolutions and tracking all the transactions, so that you're not having to, take this from here and that from there and consolidate everything and put the report together. It tracks it all for you, makes it super simple. And we will be combining that app with the institutional custody app. That's going to take a little bit longer, but it will be one consolidated application over the long term. So as far as the bank account goes, you do have a bank account. You can wire, you can ACH from that account there, the cash account that we've created for you over there, utilizing Uphold's infrastructure. It does not have a debit card. And the reason for that is all of these accounts for retail and the exchanges have been adapted for retail, personal accounts. They have not been adapted for business accounts. So we are pretty much the largest demand for that application with Uphold. And they are working on those things behind the scenes. I don't know when they will be released, but I have been told that they're working on them. It's a bigger lift than I thought it was going to be. I thought, oh, well, you have debit cards and credit cards for people. How much more difficult can it be for a business? And apparently that's a much bigger lift than I anticipated. So that's my fault on that. But I can confidently say that we will likely be the first people to have that in the not too distant future. So again, appreciate your support. Appreciate you being part of the community, working with us on the LLC and your digital assets and all that. And thank you for the super chat, my man, Dan. All right, let's go back up to the top here and then we'll run it down. Next up, we got Bet Vegas, Nevada. They say, good evening. You mentioned there was a second yield product September 1st. Please explain also my risk of loss on XRP on either strategy. So the first SMA structured income product, I wouldn't necessarily call it a yield product. There is a chance for loss similar to the funds. We get a credit line against the XRP held there in your account. It never moves. It's never pooled. So that's the benefit, right? Like you don't have to commingle your assets with anybody else on this still. which is great. That's what I wanted for a long time. So this is an SMA infrastructure. It's the first of its kind. It's never been done before in crypto. Anchorage has worked closely with us in order to be able to get this across the line, and they're willing to issue, a line of credit, and that's kind of what's limiting our capacity for who can participate. But that will be expanded as we continue to roll out products. So, excuse me, we get a 50% LTV against the asset in a line of credit. So, the asset would have to drop substantially in value before there was any issue, and we still have some buffer there. So we never actually trade the full credit line. Same thing we do in the funds. We've never had a margin call on any of the funds. Even during 1010 and all the other market liquidations, we've never had an issue because we always manage that liquidity exceptionally well. So we mitigated risk there, but there still is a risk. And then separately of that, if the strategy were to underperform for an extended period of time, same thing with the funds, there is a possibility that they would have to liquidate collateral to cover those losses. Unlikely. The strategy that we were putting this stuff into has performed exceptionally well with another custodian. This is the first time it's being used at Anchorage. Really good partner. As soon as I can announce them, I'm excited to be able to do that. And they've generated good returns. I would rather underpromise and overdeliver. So we are targeting 3 to 5% for people participating in this opportunity. And that's net of fees. So that covers all of the costs for participating at DAG and the advisor fees, the AUM fees, all the stuff. That is 3 to 5% paid to you on this strategy. So you'd effectively be generating somewhere between, 5 to 9, something like that, depending on what your AUM fee and the other fees associated. So that's where we're at with it. It is a bit riskier strategy. They use 12 different algorithmically traded arbitrage strategies in order to be able to generate returns. And I can't give away too much of the secret sauce because you'd probably figure out who it was that we're working with. But all that to say, it is a little bit further up the risk curve. Probably the strategy itself is probably closer to like 2 out of 10 if you looked at the whole thing and all the risk associated with it. Much safer than DeFi, right? There's no way that you can be hacked on this, or there's not like a bridge to this that could be exploited or other things that you've seen out there. But there's still risk. Any investment has risk. Anybody that tells you any different, they're not telling you the full story. So that's the first strategy. We have another strategy that's closely behind that with another big partner that I would also like to talk about, but I cannot yet. And I'm hopeful that we'll be able to launch those in parallel in September. But again, all just depends on, you guys know this. We've been working on this for a long time. The blocker before was infrastructure. We've talked to over 30 different partners over the past year, trying to sort through this and get it figured out. The infrastructure and the legal and the compliance was the biggest piece of it. We've sorted all of that out. And so now it should be much more repeatable moving forward in order to be able to put strategies out on the market and, get you guys access to. And all these are institutional strategies, by the way. Traditionally, if you were to approach these managers, you would need $20 to $50 million just to be able to allocate and participate with them. So this is not something that traditional retail has any access to. These are high-level partners that we are working with and coordinating with. So that's the benefit of working with DAG. There's a lot of people that run smaller strategies out there that have decent track records that don't manage institutional capital. That's what these partners have been doing for decent periods of time, somewhere between 2 and 7 years, some of them. And they have good track records, and they've built reputations that precede them in the market. So that's what I would say would be the unique advantage of working with us for putting your assets to work, is you're going to get access to stuff that anybody that has 25,000 XRP, you're not even sniffing this. Like, it's not something that you could participate in. Even if you had 1 million XRP, you're not going to be able to sniff this. You're not going to be able to participate at the current price. Post-price appreciation might be a little different. But all that being said, really excited to get these to market. And we want to continue to roll out strategies. Our goal is at least 1 a month through the rest of the year using this infrastructure that we now have in place. Snozar says the Senate's R's refused to seat D's in the CFTC and the SEC as required by law, and the Supreme Court ruled Donald J. Trump can fire without cause anyway. This is a big reason Democrats only vote party lines on PACE, SAVE, and the Clarity Act. Yeah, I'm with you. There's a gridlock at the moment that's going on there. We'll see what happens after midterms. If we can get through this collapse quickly, and there's a V bottom out of here, because I do think that there's going to be a significant fall in the stock market before midterms. That's, again, I'm not giving you time frames. I'm just giving you my best guess. I'm speculating here, so don't take it like truth. Okay, do what's best for you. Talk to your financial advisor. I will say this though, we deal with some larger clients, and consistently across the larger clients that I talk to, their advisors are pulling funds from the market and getting them in cash. So, and they don't know necessarily why. They pay people to manage their money. They're not overly concerned about it. If they think there's risk or situation, then they, sell things and get into cash before there's a problem. So again, not trying to incite fear or say that we're, right on the precipice of a collapse or any of those things. We saw, 7,600 on the S&P today. Stock market looks healthy, like it's going up. There's a lot of leverage there. There's a reverse carry trade. So whenever they raise rates, whenever we see a spike in oil, I think it's going to be musical chairs and music's going to stop for at least a little bit. But if we can get that over with quickly before midterms and V-bottom out of there, with the acceleration of, capital implementing stock, instant settlement on the stock market, the FX market and other stuff, the velocity of money will pick up. We'll see more GDP produced. We have AI compounding all of that. And I think that we'll be generating significantly more GDP in a very short period of time after this leverage is removed from the system. So we'll have to see. Nobody knows timeframes. You guys know that at this point. I'm just giving you all my assessment, my current assessment. V-Train says, Carbon One member, what industry gains more from the Clarity Act, banking or crypto industry? Also, Clarity fails to pass. What's stopping banks from using DeFi and being able to do what the exchanges can with stablecoins? Good questions. Good questions. Actually, like I said, I made a whole video that's going to be coming out probably tomorrow on that exact topic, why the institutions aren't adopting DeFi yet. There needs to be clear guide rails that's implemented with DeFi. There needs to be an accountable party that participates in these pools. There needs to be digital identity, credentials. You need oversight in the pools. There's just a lot of things that don't exist anywhere other than the XRPL. And I think that, we've seen DeFi on all these other networks. There are AMMs on other networks. I think Ripple and the developers of the XRPL and the validators on the XRPL have been very methodical, watching from a distance, seeing all the mistakes that have been made over the past decade, and taking notes and working with institutions and regulators and compliance in order to be able to make sure that the guardrails are in place on the XRPL for this to actually be adopted by institutions and in a regulated way so that capital can move into DeFi, or they can use that as the infrastructure to facilitate all of these capital markets, because that's what it is. It's marrying the two. 10 years from now, it's just going to be finance again. It's not going to be, crypto or DeFi versus TradFi. TradFi is a recent term. It used to just be finance before there was DeFi. So they'll marry the two, and it'll just be back to being finance again. But all that to be said, the Clarity Act, it would benefit crypto more than it would benefit the banks, because it would provide, them with the understanding of do they need to be a transfer agent? Do they need to be a commodity pool operator? Do they need to have their broker-dealer license? All these things in order to be able to have an accountable party and oversight in these ecosystems, they would actually know the rules of the road. And now those banks already have those licenses, but they don't have the infrastructure. They'd have to adapt Fireblocks or Copper or one of these other things. And they're behind. I think that there's going to be a situation where we do get clarity. I think it'll be after the collapse of things. I think there's going to be a huge consolidation in the market. I think Tether's going to have some issues when the reverse carry trade unwinds. And when that occurs, there's going to be a significant devaluation of exchanges. liquidity in crypto is going to be sucked up, and there's going to be a lot of them on the precipice of bankruptcy, and they're probably going to get bought up by the big banks and institutions. And then they'll just leverage their infrastructure. They'll integrate it with their own, and they'll be off to the races. And I think that's been the plan the whole time. Let them build it, we'll buy it later, type thing. So that's yeah. Hopefully that answers your question. And we are waiting on stablecoin regulation from the OCC, the Fed, the Treasury, and the FDIC in order for banks to be able to issue stablecoins at scale. Hopefully, it'd be really cool if we got that this week. Fresco, my man, he says, or my lady, not sure, probably my man. He says, what do you think about the Ply Network token and what it's doing with Wall Street and other financial institutions like Fidelity while it's currently trading under 4 cents? I have never heard of it. Has not crossed my radar. I will write it down. Ply, PL, sorry, Pyth, PYTH network. I will give it a Google. I will look it up. But it's not anything that I have enough information on to be able to comment on at this time. Thank you for the super chat. And I apologize, I don't have a better answer for you. Chris, my man, he says, hey, Jedi Jake. What's up, my dude? Help! My wife is threatening to leave me and take the dog if XRP doesn't appreciate soon. I will miss the dog. Her name's Pebbles. Give me some hopium. There's another guy that said that, he recently got divorced over this whole thing. I guarantee there's been a lot of marriages that have been nixed because of all of this. I can say it's, for a long time it was not good in my relationship because of all this. And that was, I take ownership of that. There was things that I didn't do. I was buying more XRP and other crypto than, and neglecting some of my other responsibilities. So you got to toe that line. But all that being said, like I've said before, I sound like a broken record. Well, I'll say it this way. I've been to Swell for 3 years. I was there in 23, 24, and 25. This will be the 4th year up in New York. And at none of those did Ripple ever say that this was the year for institutional adoption. They always talked about things that predicated that. So things that needed to be in place before it. 2023, we were coming off of the FTX deal, and they were talking about custody and identity. They kind of doubled down on that in 24. Last year in 25, they had the institutions there: BlackRock, State Street, Blackstone, Fidelity, NASDAQ, all of them. And they were saying tokenization is here. Monica Long said that this year, 2026, we will see full-scale adoption of XRP and the XRPL at an institutional level. They've never said that before. I don't think that they would make that comment if that wasn't going to be the case. They have too much credibility out there in the market, and it would have to be a certainty for them to make those type of comments. So we're here. Does that happen this month or within the next 4 months here before the end of the year? I think so. I literally have a bet on it. Again, and I want to say something on that, which is interesting. Tinfoil hat for a second. I know you guys like that. There's been some stuff over the years to talk about the Grinch. And Scams, is the account. He's a panther-looking guy on Twitter. He doesn't show his face. He always posts that he's the Grinch at Christmas. And the Grinch had to steal Christmas or take Christmas before he could give it back. So I lost the bet last year, right, to him because we did not hit $750 by the end of the year. But we got it. We're on again, double or nothing this year. So if he is the Grinch and he does have a change of heart and he does give it back, and that's what he meant by he's playing his role, would be pretty interesting. All right. A Zing Giant, they say, thank you for sticking to your guns. It's clear what's happening. The last intervention feels like a save face. Now they can blame them for not trying. Sipping tea, just like you. Cheers, my man, because it's inevitable with the SPR. I would agree with you, sir. I appreciate the kind words and the support. And I've been spot on with a lot of things. I'm not perfect by any means. Told you guys the Clarity Act was not looking good a long time ago, long time ago. And nobody wants it to pass more than me. I was literally on Capitol Hill last year advocating for it alongside the Genius Act when the Genius Act was passed through the Senate and the Clarity Act was passed through the House. And here we are, more than a year later, and it still hasn't been passed. And now I'm telling you, unless there is a significant event that requires them to pass this bill this week, or they hang out for, their recess, which I don't think they're going to do, probably not till after midterms, which is rough. But like I said, good thing we have the SEC and the CFTC to take the reins if that's not going to happen. Will, my man, he says, hey, Jake, how many more times do you think the U.S. can intervene by bailing out Japan? Will it make the reverse carry trade worse when it happens? I explained that at the beginning of this, but I will touch on it again. Yes, I think that it will make it worse. They're adding additional leverage. They're allowing Japan to post their bonds in the repo market to borrow dollars to sell them for yen to be able to push their currency up. Because they were selling U.S. treasuries onto the market, causing our yields to rise, which we do not want them to do. And this prevents that. So they're able to collateralize those, borrow dollars. And the problem is if they raise interest rates because the oil spikes and the collateral depreciates because other people sell treasuries, they're going to have to post additional collateral on those loans that they took. And then, anyway, it's a self-feeding loop that just continues to burn things down. Leverage works great on the way up. You saw it with MicroStrategy. They're borrowing cash to buy Bitcoin. And as long as Bitcoin appreciates, everything's hunky-dory. Now they're selling Bitcoin. They said they would never sell Bitcoin. And now they just sold another, $100 million worth of Bitcoin today. Is that a sign of the bottom of the market? Potentially. I mean, if you look at 4-year cycles and you believe in all of that, and I mean, it's been pretty spot on as long as, like I've said before, as long as constraints remain the same, things will continue to operate as they have in the past. When constraints change, things won't operate the same way that they have in the past. Things will decouple from Bitcoin. I think that might be XRP. K27 says, hey, Jake, after you become a multi-billionaire, can you give us a catchphrase if you want us to know you have become compromised by Israel? Not overly concerned about that. Not worried about that. Appreciate you, good looking out, but not overly concerned about it. Rick Johnson, good to see you, dude. I missed you last Wednesday. I don't know where you were at. I was sad. He says, the tea lady, last live. Where's Rick Johnson? No need to concern yourself. A little Southern Belle. General George Patton is here. It's good to see you, Rick. All right. DFW Mike, my man. I will say, if you guys don't know DFW Mike, if you are in Texas, Mike does a fantastic job hosting events for the mastermind, little meetups that we have. That's one of the other cool pieces about being part of the mastermind. We had one last week in Atlanta, Georgia. About 200 people showed up to that. A lot of people from North Carolina, Alabama, surrounding states came in for that there in Atlanta. And you get to meet a lot of cool people, other cool people that you might live a couple streets over from somebody else that understands all this stuff, and you feel like you're on an island. And anybody you tell, they look at you like you have a third eye. If you're in the mastermind, you're going to find other people that are in your neck of the woods that you can go have lunch with or dinner with and create relationships with before price appreciation, so that you have cool people to hang out with when it happens, because they all get it. So again, appreciate Mike for what he does. Shout out to him and his wife for helping host all the events. He says, drip, drip, flood. Thank you. Thankfully, not all of them turned into disaster. T-Lady, so caught me off guard. Sophia had fun, and she said, is an absolute delight. Be safe. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, my wife did attend the East Texas meetup this last weekend out in East Texas. They're in the group and brought a surprise buy for Mike. So again, appreciate you, brother, for all that you do for the community. If you guys want to join the community, I didn't even tell you how to do that. All you got to do is go over there to beyondbroke.com and use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar, get you the first month for $2. They're in the group Carbon One or Social. Try it out. Try it on for size. You know, no harm, no foul. It's month to month, no contract. Cancel anytime if it's not your style. If Discord's too hard, I will say we're going to be launching a new website over there at beyondbroke.com in the near future, and should be a lot easier to use for people that have a hard time with Discord. Wake up, Uncle Danny. Got to meet Uncle Danny out there in Georgia. It was really cool. He's become, a celebrity is what he said. Because I say it every time on the live. Chomp Master. He says, Jake the Snake, how are you, sir? Ripple investing in Zillow and Liquidity feels more like XRPL plumbing for tokenized funds. I would agree with you, sir. But if it trades, settle in RLUSD, what's the real demand trigger for XRP? Explain it like I'm 4. So, collateralization. If you have to post liquidity in those pools in order to be able to facilitate the transfer or trading of the assets that are being exchanged, so I don't know that I want to talk about Link 2. I'll talk about Link 2. There's another situation that's going on over there this week that's not so, it's kind of grim. Schwab has backed out on their deal, and it looks like that, a good chunk of Ripple equity is going to be sold at fire sale prices to 4 private equity funds for people that were participating at Link 2. So not so good on that side. But the reason I bring that up is a while back, they were looking to create tokenized market for SPVs that they had in the equities on their platform that traded real time. And one of the major blockers that they had for that was liquidity. They did not have a way, because you have to post cash on the other side of that trade in order to be able to buy the shares back or have a market, kind of like an AMM. So in an AMM, your order is going to execute, right? Normally there needs to be a buy and sell on both sides of the transaction. If the market maker themselves will buy or sell whatever they need to you when you execute a trade, it's much more efficient. It can also be not so good for them. It can be a liquidity problem if there's not enough liquidity. So you would need excess liquidity in those pools in order to be able to facilitate the transfer of whatever the value is going to be. So even if it settles in RLUSD, the other side of that pool is going to be the tokenized security or the commodity or whatever else is in the pool for that real world asset that's being exchanged for that pair. And you need liquidity to be able to bridge that and exchange those two values. And that's something a lot of people miss. I don't want to say people don't understand markets, but, and I try to do this. I try to oversimplify things, like just like you said, explain it to you like you're 4. So if you were 4, this is how I would explain it. If you tried to push your sailboat across a pool with no water in it to the other person, and they pushed you their sailboat, and you guys exchanged those sailboats, and there's no water in the pool, can you push your sailboat across the pool? Can it get to them? No. The more liquidity that's in the pool, the easier it is for trades to happen. And ideally, all trades would execute, right? If you wanted to buy or sell something, you would need it to be liquid. Right now, private markets are extremely illiquid. You literally have brokers that arbitrage this in the market. You have Equities In, Forge, Hive, NPM, many others out there that deal in private equity, that they find buyer and seller and they coordinate that and they take a fee as the broker, right? But if you had a market where you could just sell your assets at any given time, as long as you're within the bounds of compliance, you would pay a lot less money. It'd be a lot cheaper to do that than a 5% fee to pay the broker on all those transactions on both sides. Same thing with a home. Homes were tokenized, or you had, and I'm not saying take away jobs from people, but markets are always going to move toward being more efficient. And this is how they do that. So hopefully that gives you kind of an analogy that's a little bit more tangible or easy to understand. They have to have some way to be able to transfer the value between the counterparties and also allow orders to execute irrespective of if there's a buyer or seller on the other side of the transaction. All right, Tyler, Mr. Vaughn, thank you for the super chat, my man. He says, Jake, I have a theory that we're in world war already. The Ukraine, Russia, US, and Iran, when the reverse carry trade unwinds, Japan will jump in to create a wartime economy and try to save their currency and stimulate their economy. Does it unwind? It's a good theory, and it's predicated. I told you guys about the fourth turning. If you've read that book, you would kind of understand where he's coming from. So most other fourth turnings, or pretty much all fourth turnings in the past, have had a wartime event. In a debt-based system, war stimulates the economy. You have to produce tanks and guns and send people off, and the government creates jobs and they pay people, and they print money. But because there's economic benefit, there's GDP that's produced in the private sector that offsets the printing. In the economy that we're moving to, which is a commodities or asset-backed based economy, you won't need to do that anymore. You won't need to stimulate the economy through creating war in order to be able to drive production of different goods and take that capital and move it. So that would be, again, if constraints remain the same, I would agree with you. I just think that we are in a shift at a moment in time where there are multiple dynamics at play that allude to the fact that we are moving to an asset-based system versus, look at Basel III. You can look at, Russia converting their currency to be backed by gold. Other countries are looking to do the same thing. The US, I think, also might be looking to do the same thing. We talked about gold-backed bonds, Judy Sheldon, So all that being the case, I don't know that we're going to move into a world war. I think that they're going to use some other event as a way to galvanize society. And I think the government structures as a whole are going to change drastically during this transition. How long does that take? Is it by the end of Trump's term? Is he the last president? Do we have multiple presidents after Trump? My business partner and many other people would disagree with me on this, but I'm going to make a bold statement. I do think that Trump is our last president under the current regime of the US government. I think that there's going to be a drastic change over the next 2 years in reform of how we operate. All right. Schmoopus, good to see you, dude. He says, so, Jake, if the US system is an upside down pyramid with a tiny wobbly end made up of treasuries, what is the opposite wide stable base made of? So the top of the pyramid would be the largest market in the world. It would be derivatives. And derivatives, are notional value somewhere between 400 trillion all the way up to $4 quadrillion. There's no way to actually define how much is out there. If you guys did your homework and you followed me on Twitter, you would have watched the Big Short this last weekend. In that movie, they talk about CDOs, or collateralized debt obligations, and synthetic CDOs, which are a derivative of the original CDO, which are leveraged. So, my crude analogy for the derivatives market was actually pretty similar to what they provide in that movie if you want to go watch it. But imagine you're in Vegas and you're watching the Super Bowl, and you have $100 bill. They missed this part. They didn't talk about this part because they weren't talking about treasuries. They were talking about the derivatives on top of the structure that was already built. But in order to collateralize treasuries, let's say you started with a $100 bill. You loan that to the person in front of you. The person in front of you that you loaned the $100 to bets the person next to them, not on the whole game, on one play on the game. It's also predicated on the outcome of the game. And they take your $10 bill and they bet, or they take your $100 bill and they bet $10,000 with the $100 bill that you loaned them. So it's not even their $100. Somebody loaned them this money, and then they're going to leverage it 100 times in the bet, and they bet that there's going to be a flag on this play. Okay, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. And then you take that same $100 that you loaned them, like, because you do own it, right? Like it's a debt note back to you. You're going to take that same $100 and you're going to leverage a bet predicated on their bet that with the guy next to you, that the guy on the right is going to punch the guy on the left when he loses the bet. And you also leverage that 100 times. So $10,000 to him off that $100 bill. That is the derivatives market. That's what they do. They use the same collateral. They lend it over 9 or 10 times, which are US treasuries. And they take leveraged bets on different financial products. And it doesn't have to be that outlandish. Some of them are more conservative than that. But you can imagine how big a market could be if there's that much leverage out there predicated on the same treasuries circulating. It is massive. It's gigantic. So that is the top end of that pyramid is the derivatives market. Breaking Seals says, hey, Jake, cool name, by the way, and appreciate the super chat. They say, what is the economic mechanism that links XRP utility to its price? Can adoption increase while the token remains inexpensive? How much daily buying is required to offset new supply for existing holders to take profits? All very good questions. So I'm going to take them one by one. What is the economic mechanism that links XRP's utility to its price? It would have to be the underlying transfer or DEX for exchange between tokenized real world assets and stablecoins, which looks like that's going to be the outcome. They're already settling treasuries on the XRPL. They're tokenizing other real world assets on the XRPL. And that's because of the amendments that they passed for digital identity and the other guardrails they put in place for compliance and adoption by institutions. So it would have to be that institutions and enterprises transact over the XRPL and utilize XRP as the settlement mechanism between those trades. Can adoption increase while the token remains inexpensive? I would argue no. And David Schwartz even pointed this out in the same forum that Monica Long made her statement about XRP and institutional adoption in 2026. He was asked, what is the major stopping point for institutions' adoption of XRP at the current time? Is it regulation? And he, in fact, said, no, it is not regulation. XRP has clarity. The main opposition that institutions have at this time to holding XRP and using it is the volatility of the asset. So it needs to be a high, stable price before they can even start utilizing it to be able to settle these transactions. And that's why my theory is predicated on a supply shock to be able to drive the price to somewhere around $100 so that they can then start utilizing it. And then the additional volume over the network for the settlement would continue to drive price higher. How much daily buying is required to offset new supply for existing holders to take profits? So that's the supply and demand dynamic you're discussing there. If retail currently holds roughly, I'm going to say 10% of the supply. That's probably accurate at this point. When I talked to Simon at Uphold back in 2023, it was around 5 or 6%. Uphold alone has about 5 billion XRP on their platform that's held by retail. And, you know, between the other exchanges and cold wallets, I'm going to say that's around 10 billion XRP held by retail. So the institutional demand, in order for people to sell all of that XRP, would have to be 10 billion XRP by institutions and enterprises. Now, most people aren't going to sell all of their XRP. Most of the XRP, well, exchanges are at an all-time low for their liquidity. That was not at an all-time low, a 5-year low, excuse me. Since 2021, this is the lowest liquidity that we've seen on exchanges for XRP. That was last all-time high also. No, I'm sorry. Last all-time high was last year in 2026. We didn't quite get to all-time high. It was like $3.66. All-time high is $3.84. In 2021, it got to like $1.96, I think was the top. So anyway, all that to say, it wouldn't take that much demand at the current price, $10 billion. Like for institutions, that's a drop in the bucket. Now, if we see the price of XRP appreciate aggressively, that becomes much, much more money, right? If we go where I'm thinking, that becomes, $10 trillion. That's a lot more money. It's still not impossible. There is that much money out there that could be allocated toward XRP. If it does become pristine collateral in the same position as treasuries, like I think it's going to be, there'd be tons of demand. Again, the derivatives market, like I said before. So I don't know if that answers your question specifically, but that kind of gives you the numbers and at least a framework to think through it. We are an hour in, so I'm going to go all the way to the bottom of the chat here, and I'm going to work my way back up. So just, cut off the super chats here. If you do send a super chat, if you've already sent a super chat and I do not get to it tonight, all you got to do is email it to us over there, info@dag.com, and my team will get it over to me, and I will answer it on the Wednesday Night Live before we get into the questions on that night. And I always forget to say, please do like, subscribe, share, hype it, all those fun things. It does help with the algorithm. I don't know what my percentage is of people that watch that aren't subscribed, but it's just one click. It does help the channel, helps me out. I don't really make a whole lot of money off YouTube. I'd actually even share my deal. It's like $5-6 grand a month. Nothing crazy. For some people, that's really good money. I'm not saying it's not. But like I've told you guys before, our company sponsored the channel, not beholden to anybody. I can share my opinions, and so there's all these people who are like, you make all this money off this stuff. We do okay. But I would also say that most of the money that we make goes back into the company. If not all the money we make goes back into the company. All right. Dark 30 says, with continual efforts from other governments and countries to save the yen, would that mean the carry trade won't happen? If the status quo were maintained and they opened up the Strait of Hormuz, really, even at this point, it's too far gone. They wouldn't be able to ship oil fast enough to replenish stores across the world. There's still going to be a crisis for energy, and that's going to cause significant inflation across the world, including the US. Like, I think we'll be okay. I don't think gas prices are going to $10. I do think they will be higher. They're going to sell it for more, even if it's not worth more, because they want to make more money. So that's going to increase the cost of energy, transportation, logistics, moving things around, production, all that stuff. And therefore, that's going to be passed on to consumers, both domestically and even more so internationally, if we were to stop exporting oil to the rest of the world. That is the black swan that nobody's talking about. Everybody sees the reverse carry trade now. Besson's come out and they're helping Japan, and they've propped it up using the repo market. Even if they stop the war tomorrow, people would think, oh, we're saved, it's okay. Not okay. The damage is done at this point. I've said that for a while. So just be aware of that. We are going to see another spike in oil. And when that happens, the carry trade's going to unwind. And it's at this point, they're adding additional leverage. Not good. Dungeon Dojo says RSVP to Texas meetup, but didn't hear back. Showed up, but panicked when I looked around and didn't know what I was looking for. Left. I'm ashamed. Oh, come on, man. You can DM people there in the group. And this is hard. Like a lot of people are introverts. I was when I was younger. I was actually very socially awkward when I was young. I think that's a skill, right? Like the more you work that muscle, you're able to get better at it. Still not quite as funny as I would like to be. There's always been people that are much funnier than I am. But all that to be said, don't be ashamed. Come check it out. You can DM people. If there's other people that have RSVP'd, or the person that's running that meetup, so like DFW Mike was running that one, just ping him. Say, hey, where are you guys at? In the restaurant or wherever it's being held, and he'll message you back and let you know if you went to the wrong place, which I've done plenty of times. Or if they're right around the corner or in the back room somewhere. So don't be ashamed. Glad you attempted to go out there, and that's what the community is all about. We want to make sure that you are involved and get the value from being there in the mastermind. Michael from Apollo Jets, good to see you, dude. He says, Mike here from Carbon 2. Since January, as you know, I'm with Apollo Jets. It's come to my attention that you created a partnership with a broker at Apollo recently, which is what I was trying to do when we meet up in Vegas back in April. We've been using him actually since that. We chartered a jet from him back then. But we're going to need multiple people, my man. It's not like it's the end of the world. We're happy to work with you. There's a lot of other people in the group that may not, utilize the same broker that we work with. Post PA, there's 17,000 people in the group. I think a lot of those people are going to be wanting to fly private. So you're already in there. You're already networking. No harm, no foul. Happy to recommend you also if you want to come up and talk in the Carbon 2 chat. We do have an interesting Carbon 2 call tomorrow. I will be there, and we will be accompanied by Carson, who is the COO of our insurance division. He is going to be talking about more advanced insurance policies for business owners and people that have higher income in order to be able to put that to work in a tax efficient way. And really excited for that one. So, but if you want to hop up for a second, we can just acknowledge you and make sure that the group knows who you are, and that if they need a private jet, you can be their guy. We've got, I'm going to butcher the name, so I'm not going to try it. I appreciate the super chat. They say, Jake, hope you and the family are well. We're blessed, brother. Thank you. Hope the same for you and your family. 2 questions. First, do you think there's any chance for Clarity to pass this week? 2%. I'm 2%. We're down to the wire here. If there's not a must, if something doesn't happen that requires that Congress passes it, probably not going to happen. But again, like I said, the SEC and the CFTC seem to be coordinating and issuing joint guidance, and they're going to be able to step in and issue, guidance and regulation around that, which is awesome to see. It's a complete 180 from where we were, just a few years ago. He says, second, will the reverse carry trades start in a large scale soon and use XRP and price appreciation? And the use of XRP and the price appreciation that we're all waiting for. Thanks, bro. Like I said, I think it's already started. We are 2 years tomorrow since the beginning of all of this actually taking place, when Japan was raising interest rates in 2024, and we saw 13% down in the S&P in a single day off the back of a Sunday evening when the Nikkei was down 17%. Limit down. We've already seen a ton of limit down over there in Korea's stock market. They're feeling it. If we did not have this solution, we would be moving into a global depression, a deflationary depression, which is way worse than, well, arguably, right? There are going to be people that argue that an inflationary depression would be worse, but the Great Depression was a deflationary depression. So, I mean, that's been worse than any recession that we've ever had in recent history. So I would argue that the deflationary depression is worse, but that's neither here nor there. All that to say, I think it's already started. And I think that when oil spikes, we will see the rest of it kick off. Dark 30 again says, with continual efforts from other governments, we already did that one. Let's see here. We did that one as well. It always kicks me down in the chat. I don't know why it does that. And again, if I miss your super chat, don't be afraid to just email it over and we will get it on the Wednesday live. Emmanuel, because I'm going to butcher the first name. I say, hi, I moved my XRP to a biometric descent, but with every amount of XRP I sent, I got dust XRP of 0.002. What should I do? Should I move the XRP to another decent wallet? What's going on if I leave the decent or leave it in that wallet? You're fine. Just don't open the memo. Do not click into that transaction and open the memo. There are a lot of people that are predators on the XRPL that will look at large accounts and send dust to them and try to get to communicate with you through the memo code in the dust that they send you. It's just free XRP for you. It's more XRP in your pocket. Let them keep dusting you, because it's keep racking up more XRP. It's not a whole lot of XRP, but at least it's a little bit more. But it's yours now. And as long as you don't click into the memo and do anything with it, it's free XRP for you. And your wallet's fine. So this is a public ledger. If you go onto XRP Scan, you can look up all the wallets. You don't know who they belong to because it's just a string of characters, but you can see which wallets have larger balances. And if you were trying to steal somebody's XRP, you would dust their wallet and hope that they clicked into the memo code, which would allow them access or start to communicate with you and allow them access. So just just take it. It's free XRP. Just don't do what stay away from what I said not to do. David, he says, the golf tip you gave was great. Having your weight on your left side, Beyond Broke member. Hope we can get out and play sometime. Yeah, it's called stack and tilt. So, I do that on chips or pitch shots. I don't transfer my weight. You're just, it's kind of a long putt motion. Keep your hands forward. You chip it. If it's a longer shot, I do transfer my weight quite a bit. I'm trying to hit it as far as I can. But that requires a lot more coordination. And there are a lot of people that just play whatever yardage they have just standing on their left foot. And they stack and tilt and hit it. And it goes whatever distance it goes. And it's very consistent. The one of the best rounds I ever shot as a junior, I shot under par at a tournament. It was like the only tournament that my mom came and watched me at. She thought I played good all the time. I did not. I did that. I just took 3/4 swings all day, and just played those yardages because I would hit them on the range all the time because I would have to hit low shots or different things. It was windy, and I think I shot like 2 or 3 under when I played that course, and I just kept it simple. Right? Golf is already a complicated enough game. The more variables you put in there, the more complicated it gets. So the more variables you can eliminate, likely the more consistent you will play. And if you know what your miss is, and you can, try to navigate the course, because that's a big piece of it too, is missing in the spot where it's not a bad thing. It's not in the hazard. It's not in the trees. Might be in the rough a little bit, but you can play it from there. You can find your ball. So anyway, appreciate the kind words. And again, we will definitely do some more golf outings over there in the mastermind. Apologies again. He says, Mike, here continued. I just want to make sure this doesn't disrupt my Carbon 2 networking that I've been developing and working hard. No, not at all, my man. Like I said, it's a relationship driven business. I'm not trying to take any business from you. You've been in the mastermind a long time. Like I said, we're going to need multiple brokers. It's not like one person can handle all the people they're going to need to be coordinating and flying all the time. There's 17,000 people. If you come into more than $10 million, I'm not saying that that's the level that you should be at before you fly private. But if you have the additional means and you've never experienced before, I would at least consider trying it. And you might reach out to Michael. He's over here on YouTube. I will tell you, Apollo is awesome, and they can help coordinate things for you, and he can get you situated and get you a real good price versus, some of the other brokers that are out there. Lind with Laura. Good to see you, ma'am. She says, hey, Jake, BTC's recent cold card wallet exploit. Do you think it could be a catalyst to cause BTC's price to drop to 0 due to uncertainty? Also, can the same exploit occur with other cold wallets, Decent, Ledger, etc., and DA's, etc., and DA's XRP? Not sure what DA's XRP is. Maybe it's DAG's. So that was an exploit in the code that they hadn't found for 3 or 4 years that AI found. I will say this about Anchorage, that there's multiple signatures that are required in order to move assets. It's not, you have the seed phrase, you can transact. There's a lot of stop gates we call and verify, that it is you that's moving your assets. We do some other measures in order to be able to make sure that it's you moving your assets. We do have a delay. Also, it's a 24-hour SLA to remove assets. Sometimes it takes us that long. Most of the time it doesn't. But that gives us a chance to make sure we're catching anything if there's any issues or there is a problem. When it comes to other cold wallets, love Decent. They've never had that happen yet. Actually have... out of frame for a second. Sorry. I was getting, they sent me this to try out. So if you guys haven't seen, this is their new wallet. You just tap it to the back of your phone. It's very much like a Tangem card. They have an extra backup over here to be able to regenerate the wallet if you lose this card. So another great product by Decent. They do have ways to be able to leverage your XRP and generate returns over there if you are international, through Doppler and some of the other things that they've developed. Big shout out to them. They do a fantastic job, and we're going to make a video about this in the near future. And we are an affiliate for the channel. We get like $5 if you go buy a wallet through them. But there's a lot of other good options out there, just like you mentioned. There's EliPal, there's Enclave, there's Arculus, bunch of stuff out there that's air gapped and really solid. Tangem, you name it. So it's possible. The answer is it's possible. All of these that have physical hardware could have something in the back end that could be an issue, that could be exploited by AI. And as quantum comes around, that's going to become even bigger of a risk. That's again why I'm an advocate for institutional custody at Anchorage. They've already started to put measures in place to become quantum proof, and they continue to upgrade their security. They have a lot of things because they are an OCC regulated bank that they have to adhere to. And we will continue to partner with other institutional custodians to broaden the breadth of places that we're able to hold assets for our clients inside of institutional venues. So I like that the best. But again, I'm very biased, right? Like I built the company for myself. I'm a client. So I have a pretty robust understanding of all of the pitfalls and things that are out there and how to navigate those risks and which ways to set it up and mitigate them. But the answer is, yeah, any physical hardware device could have an issue or an exploit with AI being able to find these in the back end. Software wallets, We'd Say Win came out and talked about Zaman Wallet being a software wallet and how that's kind of different. This would also be a software wallet. So, maybe that's the happy medium here. If you do want to continue using a cold wallet, software wallet's probably the better option to be able to mitigate that risk of some software on the back end on the physical devices that has an exploit. But again, like I think we're super progressive, but the whole industry is headed to institutional custody over the long term. And I've said this before, it's a good analogy, so I'll use it again. People remember when you used to be able to get, well, a lot of people are younger than this, but you used to be able to get physical stock certificates for your stocks. And you would hold those in a safe at your house. That's effectively what you're doing with your crypto. You're buying it on an exchange and you're getting a representation of value. You're getting the actual asset instead of just a piece of paper that represents your stock in the company. And you're taking it off of the exchange and holding it in your house on a thumb drive instead of in a safe. There's no recourse. There's no insurance. There's no nothing if you lose it. And now nobody gets physical stock certificates. When was the last time you went to your broker and got a physical stock certificate for anything that you trade? You don't do it because there's enough security and the reputation's been built in the industry that they're not going to lose those things and you're going to have access to them. The same thing will happen for digital assets. The infrastructure is being built. We are pioneering that. And I think over the long term, most people will be very comfortable holding their assets with an institutional custodian. The old nail pounder, good to see you. He says, "Hola, senor." JC, my best to the tea lady. I'm still using capital contributions form as my dollar cost average to add to the LLC. Is that okay? We'll be onboarding as soon as possible. Thank you so much for everything that you do. If you're adding additional crypto to the same wallet that's already in the LLC, you would be wanting, you should be documenting written actions or written consents and not continuing to use the capital contributions page. If you're adding a new asset and a new wallet to the company, then you can make an amendment to your original operating agreement and add that to the capital contribution page. So I don't know what you said continue to dollar cost average. So I'm assuming you're buying more of the same asset and sending it to a wallet that's already inside the LLC, and you're going to be fine. It's not like you messed anything up. You've at least documented it, which I applaud you for. Most people don't even do that much. So as long as it's recorded somewhere, we can make sure that that's recorded over where it needs to be when you onboard with DAG, and you'll be good to go. So excited to be working with you. If you guys want to set up an LLC, I didn't even talk about this. We've done more LLCs than anybody else in the industry for crypto. It's a holding company in Wyoming with a sleeve for crypto. Makes it much easier for you to get a bank account if it's structured that way versus a trading company for crypto. There is a difference in the NAICS code, and you will have to disclose that to the bank. And if it's a crypto trading LLC, they're not going to set you up an account. So we use 551112 and 551114 as the NAICS code for this holding company. They're going to ask you if you're investing your personal assets. You're going to say no because they are assets owned by the company. You've moved them in there. There's just a lot of technical pieces there, setting up a bank account and questions that people have a hard time with. And so that was the whole idea with partnering with Uphold, to make sure that you just got a bank account when you set one up with us. Still a work in progress, but it's coming. And I mean, we have the bank account, but it doesn't have all the bells and whistles that you would get with a normal bank account. But all that being said, if you want to set up an LLC, you can go over there to dag.com, go to the private client page, look at the estate planning piece of it, set it up on the app. It's $1,500 to set up the LLC. Pretty competitively priced for all that we provide: registered agent, EIN, articles of organization, and the operating agreement, which is specialized for this entity. Nobody else has our operating agreement. It's very advanced. And we continue to iterate on that on a quarterly basis and update it for you. We also do the full maintenance on the LLC, meeting minutes, board resolutions, written consent and written action, all the things to maintain your creditor protection. Because it's filed in Wyoming, you get charging order protection as long as you maintain all your books and records correctly. And you also get the anonymity. So we are your sponsor. We have the registered agent. Our name appears on the LLC and the registered agent's address is on there. You can set up an LLC from any state. It doesn't matter if you live in Wyoming or not, in order to be able to hold your assets there in a Wyoming LLC and get all those benefits. So if that sounds cool to you, if it's something that you want to work on, we would love to work with you on it. There are other good people in the market to do it. I would just say that we've done the most of them, and we have a really streamlined way of making sure that it is taken care of correctly. Raven, good to see you. Say, hey, brother, do you have any questions, or excuse me, any thoughts on Jasmy, particularly with legal clarity in Japan? That's another one I'm going to write down because I have not looked at it. So Jasmy. Okay. I will go check it out and report back, but it's not something that I have any insights on as of today. Thank you for the super chat, and I apologize I don't have a better answer for you. C-Dub, they say, Jake, you are awesome. Thank you, man. I appreciate the kind words. He says, keep it up. I'm in a financial rotation program at a top 3 firm. I want to break into digital asset space. Meeting with digital team soon. What are some questions you think I should ask? Oh, man. I don't know what certifications you have or licenses in order to participate in the financial rotation program that you're mentioning. What's the... Anyway, all of our advisors have a 65, 63, 7, 66, 3, or a 24. So a lot of different licenses that are out there depending on what you're doing with them. When it comes to digital assets, what questions should you ask the digital team? Most institutions at this point are still kind of at level 1. They're still working through custody and digital identity and understanding those things. Basic question like, do we have staking? And I would bet the answer is no. And the tea lady's standing behind me, so I'm going to ask her what she would like. No, I said it first thing.
Sorry, I was late.
Yeah, I know. It's okay. Took care of it. Actually did something before she brought it to me for once. That's good.
I was wrong for once.
Unusual. Yeah, ask them if they have staking, how the assets are held. Are they segregated, bankruptcy, remote, and insured? Are they pooled? What type of infrastructure do you use for the custody of the assets? Is it Fireblocks or Copper? Is it a derivative of those, or did you build your own infrastructure? If they don't have their own custodian, who they're using as their custodian? What's the oversight on that? Is it an OCC regulated custodian with a national bank charter and a BIT license in New York to be able to operate there? There's tons of questions. Like, we have a whole due diligence, a DDQ form that we have that people fill out when they come to work with us. So those would just be some of the ones off the top of my head. There are many more complex questions depending on what you're trying to accomplish with the assets. But those are just some of the basics to start with. T-Mac, They say, Jake, can DAG and Beyond Mastermind help host a few golf tournaments, post $10 or $20 price appreciation in different locations in the States? Mastermind and DAG members help donate proceeds to verified causes. We've actually, my wife and I discussed this the other day. Uh-oh, something happened on YouTube. Well, hopefully nothing bad. Definitely want to do that. We definitely want to donate to really cool causes on the charity and the philanthropic side of things. So definitely, yeah, it's definitely something we're looking at, and I have some people working on it. Dragon Lord, legend. What's up, my dude? He says, Carbon One, wife watching for the first time. Can you dumb it down? What are the basic benefits / price are to LLC, onboarding, maybe trust, explain, proactive, please. Well, I mean, I just kind of went through some of the benefits of an LLC in Wyoming that we structure. And again, we can do that in any state. Use a registered agent for the address. We are the sponsor on there, so our name appears for the anonymity that you get. The other benefit, that you can't ever mitigate all of your taxes, but the benefit of holding the assets in an LLC is going to be write-offs, right? If they are business expenses that are legitimate, like traveling to a conference or somewhere on, maybe you go to vacation while you're there, you can write that off. If it's educational material for you to be able to learn how to invest your assets through the holding company, which you could have multiple sleeves for real estate or other things post-price appreciation, you can write all of that off. If you buy a vehicle and you use that vehicle for work purposes, and you have a separate vehicle that you use for personal purposes, under Section 179 of the tax code, it's over 6,000 pounds. You can use it as heavy equipment. You can write off the total cost of that vehicle, even if you didn't put any money down or a little bit of money down, to be able to offset a pretty substantial portion of your taxes or the income that you're making off the assets. We help people navigate all of that on the tax side. We do all of the compliance to make sure that you maintain the anonymity. Why would you do it pre-price appreciation instead of post-price appreciation, I guess is what you're asking. So I'll touch on the trust for a second. An irrevocable trust probably isn't appropriate for most people pre-price appreciation, unless you have a substantial amount invested in crypto. If you have $300,000 or $400,000 in XRP and other digital assets, it's worth a conversation. Maybe even 150 if you really think it's going to move quickly. And you're single. If you're married, sounds like you are, since your wife is watching. You guys get $30 million currently under the tax code to be able to gift out of your taxable estate over your lifetime. Anything above and beyond that becomes taxed at 40%. So it would behoove you to get assets out of your taxable estate sooner than later, if you would like those to grow inside of a trust and not have to deal with that, gift tax on the other side of appreciation. With an LLC, one of the benefits you get there is, let's say you had 50,000 XRP and it goes to $1,000. You have $50 million. If it's inside of an LLC, you could gift small pieces of equity to other people you want to take care of on the cap table, your sister, your cousin, your uncle, whoever, your parents. And now that you have minority owners on the cap table, you could go get a 409A valuation done on the LLC, and you would get a reduction in the actual value of the company because it's not as marketable to a buyer. That reduction is normally somewhere between 25 and 35%. And so you could squeeze that $50 million worth of XRP that's now in the company down to $30 million and be able to gift all of it out of your taxable estate if you chose to do so. Most people keep a portion in their taxable estate and inside the LLC so that they have access to it and they control it. The legacy portion that you want to leave for your family might go into an irrevocable trust, an asset protection trust, a spendthrift trust, an ILET. There's lots of different options on the more advanced trust side. So that's kind of a high level, quick and dirty on that, but we help people navigate all those things. And if it's something that you guys are interested in, all you got to do is go over there to dag.com and book a consult, reach out through the contact us form, and one of our team members will reach out to have a conversation with you. And you're not obligated to buy anything, by the way. Like, just have a conversation, see if it's worth you doing or worth not doing. You at least know the specifics on it. And when it becomes time, we would love to work with you. But like I said, there's other people out there that do the same thing. I just think we have, again, I'm biased. I think we have the best team and the best people. Jared Mr. Young, he says, how long do you think the band-aid the U.S. is providing the Japanese yen will last? Got to be a high price before October when they tokenize the stock market. So, and like I said, it would behoove them to get this over quickly before midterms so that it could rebound. And, we're not going to be, if Trump does want, both the House and the Senate to be Republican so that they can pass bills and do things, probably need a healthy stock market. You need, people to feel good about things. You don't want the economy in disarray. Maybe that's the plan, though. Maybe it is going to be in disarray and things are going to shift. And like I said, I think that there's a lot of turmoil and change that's going to happen in the next 2 years. He sent 2 super chats. Thank you for the super chat, my man. All right, scrolling back up here, we've got Young Slim. Good to see you, my man. He says, I've done my research and your domino theory is playing out real time. Your intelligence is a blessing, bro. Appreciate you, man. Thank you. How much longer can Japan hold on? A great question. Till oil goes. Oil is going to be what kicks this over the edge. Once inflation ticks up globally because of the energy cost, that's also going to affect Bitcoin because it's going to be much more costly for people to produce the energy required in order to mine Bitcoin. There's a whole cascade of events and ripple effects, pun intended, that will occur on the other side of an oil spike. And we were close to that. We're at an all-time low for global oil reserves, the lowest that we've been since 1983 here in the US. And if we do decide to stop exporting to the rest of the world, which I speculate on that. I don't know that that's going to be the case, but if they wanted to pull the Trump card, again, pun intended, that would be what they would do to kick this deal off. Honest Aim, good to see you. He says, Mr. Legacy, hi to the tea lady. Wife and I are convinced we are extremely close to price appreciation. Thank you for your vision and for sticking to your guns. We have your back in the mastermind all the way. Love you guys. Thank you, brother. That means a lot. You guys are OGs. Y'all have been here. When we first started the mastermind, we had maybe 125, 130 people pay the $25 when we had no website, we had no nothing. I just had a Stripe link. And you guys have been there for the whole thing and seen it, grow to what it is today. It's been a wild ride. So thank you guys for believing in it when other people thought it was going to flop or, bad things have happened, and we've been able to navigate all that, and we're here. And I do think that, things are close at hand for our patience and perseverance to pay out. PPP. Stackham says, hey, Jake, I have an appointment with Amy. Hey, cool. Amy's awesome. I don't see her on DAG's website listed as an advisor. Can you confirm she works there? She's on our sales team. Yeah. I see Amy every Tuesday in our sales meeting. So she's happy to answer any of your questions. She's very well versed on all of our products. She has I would say all the people that work at our company at this point have a very robust understanding of where the market's going and how to help clients navigate getting there. Advisors are on the wealth management side. So depending on what products you're looking at purchasing, you might talk to an advisor or somebody on the sales team or on the support team also. If you're already a client, then you interact with somebody on the support team. Or if you're on the family office side, then you have your own concierge that you deal with, and they help navigate everything for you. So, but yeah, Amy definitely works there, and I think she'll take great care of you and appreciate you reaching out and wanting to have a conversation. Look forward to working with you. Jeff, my man, he says, oil has already spiked over 100 for 75 days this year. No unwind. Japan, US proved it can buy yen to unwind slow to avert the market catastrophe. Why can they continue buy yen, unwind slow, and avert collapse that no one wants? So oil did spike, and it's come back down. They've continued to deplete global. So this is kind of like people ask me, why didn't it unwind in 2024? It could have. They paused it and stopped it because we didn't have things in place for it to unwind and for us to be able to stabilize the bond market. We still need the OCC, the Fed, Treasury, FDIC, all to issue stablecoin guidance so that the banks can soak up those treasuries as they flow back here, because that is going to happen in the reverse carry trade, and they know that. So they want to remove this leverage from the system. They need to in order to be able to move back to an asset-backed economy and to kind of rewire all of this. And this is all part of the, I think, plan in order to be able to do that. It has definitely taken longer than we would like it to. Nobody wants it more than I do. I can assure you of that. This time, you know, these are dangerous words, but this time is different. Prior, when the oil spiked, we had more reserves. There was more oil on hand for Japan to be able to navigate that situation. The US and other countries also had our reserves on hand. Now there's no reserves on hand. They've burnt through those because this war is drawn out much longer than they had anticipated, and the straits remain shut down. And even, like I said, if they open the strait up, it's 30 or 45 days before oil hits shores, and then they start to replenish those oil supplies. And if there's a situation where they need a lot of oil in a short period of time for whatever reason, or exports stop from certain countries, you're going to see I think we could see, I don't ever want to give a number on oil. I think the next spike will be higher than the last spike. I will say that. I don't know where it's going to go to, but I do think it'll be higher than 110 when it goes. Rick Johnson again. General Patton, good to see you, sir. He says, JC, there you go again with the innuendo, talking about Indiana Jones' sack. And yes, I'm back. T-Lady, I'm watching like a hawk. Behind the badge film. Cool name. They say, you mentioned they tokenize treasuries first. I thought the same as you, QQQ and SPY. Am I wrong? So those are the first indexes that they've tokenized. QQQ and SPY. Treasuries have been tokenized for a couple years. I remember talking about tokenized treasuries back in Consensus in 2024 when Ondo first started doing that. So that market's, I don't want to say robust at this point, but pretty significant. There's a lot of tokenized treasuries. It's not as large as the traditional treasury market by any means, but it is significantly larger than it was at any time in the previous, in the past. But yeah, for stocks, they started with QQQ and SPY, and they will continue to, they're going to roll out the full tokenization of the stock market in October of this year. And guess what's going to be settling that? XRP. I think I got through all the super chats further up, so I'm going to go back down and try to grab the ones that were here recently. We got DN USA Crypto. They say post price appreciation, $100 XRP. Is it best to break up a sale of 4,000 tokens in multiple exchanges or one exchange? Who to use? You rock. God bless. 4,000 shouldn't be a problem to execute. I mean, that's 400 grand. I don't want to say that's a drop in the bucket. That's a lot of money for a lot of people. But for exchanges, the amount that they, trade on a daily basis, or if it's Fidelity or Anchorage or anybody else, simple. You'd be able to execute that pretty easily. Now, if you're talking $40 million, now we probably have to break it up. We're going to have to TWAP or VWAP in order to get you the best price over like a week or something. Unless you don't care and it's a high stable value and your, $40 million sale isn't going to move the market. Or you could do an OTC desk or dark pool if you're working with the right people. Kraken, Falcon X, Galaxy, one of those on the institutional side, and they can execute that for you. So, but yeah, any exchange should be able to facilitate that size of trade. But I would, if it's 400 grand, I would do it through an OTC desk. You could reach out to Uphold or Kraken, and both of them have good OTC desks that you could use. Crypto.com. I mean, really all of them have good stuff. Or you could work with us, and then we could get you the best price, and we could do it for the cheapest amount on the cost to be able to, do that transaction. 10 basis points. J-Mac, my man, he says, hey, Jake, my entire family thinks I'm crazy and doesn't believe. You're not alone. You're not alone. Can't wait to host the I Was Right party. keep it up, buddy. Appreciate all that you do. I don't want to tell you not to gloat. It's going to be difficult. I would take the high road. We talked about this. Somebody asked this question last week, I think. Like first things to do post PA. Call your attorney, call your spouse, call your CPA, and then shut up. Don't run your mouth. Don't draw attention to yourself. Don't, you've probably already told a bunch of people in your family and they don't believe you and all that stuff, and they'll probably see it and they will know. But money changes dynamics for people. And I don't know that it changes dynamics rather than reveals who people are. You want to make sure that you have a system in place for doling out capital. We work with family offices that do this. We help them structure it. So you set up a family board and a financial committee, and you have a due diligence form that would require somebody to submit a request to the board or the financial committee for a distribution of capital to start a business or a loan or whatever it's for. If you structured your trust the right way, there are specific criteria in which the distribution trustee would then fulfill those obligations, depending on if they're a beneficiary or how they're related. So I would learn a lot of those things. I would take this time to educate yourself on that so that you can structure that the right way, because you are going to have people coming to you and asking you for money. It's an inevitability. You've told enough people. If they didn't buy it and they find out that you did, and it's a large amount, they're going to come and say, hey, can you buy me a house? Can you buy me a car? Blah, blah, blah. And you could say, absolutely. We would love to do that. All you got to do is submit your request to the financial committee. And if it's approved by the board, we will dole out the capital. And then if they're, they don't really have anything, they're not going to submit it. They might be a little disgruntled, but at least they're going to have respect for you and the fact that you have a system and a process in place. And the ones that do actually have a legitimate way for you both to profit and it be mutually beneficial, then they'll come with a proposal that your financial committee can review and then your board can approve. Or if you have it in your trust and they're a beneficiary, they can submit a request and the distribution trustee will see if it aligns with what you've set out in trust. But those are the different ways to navigate those types of requests and situations that will inevitably arise post price appreciation. Mr. Apologist again, he says, thanks for the clarification. What time is the Carbon 2 call tomorrow? And how do I log in? So it's on Discord. I believe it's 7 p.m. Central Standard Time tomorrow. So, if you're part of Carbon 2, you should have access to the Discord. You just log into your account there and there'll be a little voice call in it. And you'll have access to it because you're in Carbon 2. And we'll, just raise your hand. I'll pull you up on stage and let everybody know that you're a jet broker and that if they need, help on that side, aside from the guy that I provided, that they should reach out to you. All right. Couple more and then we're going to wrap it up tonight. GDT. I used to work at a place called GDT here in Dallas. They say, hey, legend. Good to see you, sir. You are 100% correct on the rise of oil. The elites want digital identity rollout globally. And the only way to ration fuel globally is with digital ID. Are the midterms a time factor? Yeah. Again, it's predicated on the fact that people believe that there's going to continue to be the same political system that we have in place. I'm always wrong on timelines, right? Like I'm always more aggressive than things actually take. I think this one might be accurate, but I think over the next 2 years, things are going to change dramatically with our government system. I told you guys about a technocracy before. If you don't know what that term means, I would encourage you to go Google it because that's where I think we are headed. But as far as, digital ID, the safest place that I have ever been is Dubai. I've been there twice. The only cop that I ever saw in Dubai was helping somebody change their tire. But that place is a police state. You are on camera all the time. You drop your phone in the mall, it will still be in the same place that you dropped it. People don't steal things there because they used to get their hands chopped off. Just very different cultural paradigm. But with digital ID and oversight and all these things that are coming with, smart cities and all this, and AI to be able to govern all that, we need a different world. And they are going to roll out, digital ID. Part of me is kind of happy about that because I have so many scam accounts that pretend to be me, that do spoof people, which is unfortunate. Make sure that you look for the check mark or the gold star or whatever is on different social media platforms, and that you're interacting with the right account, because there are a lot of scam accounts out there. But that would prevent that. They would not be able to, pretend to be me if we had digital identity. So all that being said, it's a bell curve, right? There's always good and bad with everything. I think we'll be somewhere down the middle with it. I don't think it's a dystopia or a utopia, but that is the direction we're moving. Crypto cowboy. They say uphold versus arch for crypto loans, which is better? Pretty sure, I don't know if I should say that. I'll say it. I think they're one and the same. I could be wrong about that, but I think they're one and the same. XRP Pisces says, Jake, in NT Lady, for 25,000 XRP promotion coming, can I sign up today in DAG Wealth or not wait till Wednesday? You can sign up right now. Yeah. So I'll touch on this one more time before we close out here. He says, I just tried and it still allows 50,000 sign up for DAG. Does the promotion process work? So we're rolling out the promotion officially on Wednesday. But if you want to go ahead and pay the 1,000 and get on there, it's going to take you a couple days to go through KYB and all the stuff anyway. So for those that joined late and didn't hear the announcement at the beginning, 25,000 XRP, we're running that through September 1st. So if you do have less than 50,000 XRP and you want to onboard into institutional custody at Anchorage, we are running that promotion. And we would love to have you over there if you see that that's, of a benefit for you. It may cost too much for some people. So again, just kind of weigh those things. It's $1,000 to onboard, and then $100 a month is what it's going to cost you to hold your assets over there with Anchorage. And get the advisor. You get access to all of the products and solutions that we're rolling out and many other things. It is only 30 days that we are running this promotion. So if you're close to 25,000, you want to sneak in there, I'm not saying that we would turn you away. You're going to have to talk to them about that. They do have to be pretty strict with compliance on that stuff, but maybe you're like 23 or 24 and maybe you want to buy a little bit more in order to get in there. Not telling anybody to do that. But that would be a way that you could if you wanted to. So really excited to be able to bring this out, because we've had a lot of people reach out over the years that we've been doing this, wishing we originally started with 100,000 XRP. Then we moved down after a few promotions of 50,000 XRP to the minimum being 50,000 XRP. And now we're dropping that to 25,000 on a promotion. It's still $500,000 in total portfolio value. But if you have at least 25,000 XRP, you can now work with DAG Wealth if you get in the next 30 days. Dark 30. We just did this one. So I think we actually got through all the super chats. Again, really excited to be able to announce this as a promotion for you guys. We are going to be rolling out multiple yield products here in September. So excited to be able to announce that too. Finally, after a year's worth of saying it's coming, it's finally here. We did execute. We did make it happen. It was a long road, but we got it. So if any of that interests you, if you need help with estate planning, help mitigating taxes, structuring things the right way, advisory on your crypto, access to institutional products, we have all of it under one roof at dag.com. Go check it out over there. Insurance also, which we'll be talking about in the mastermind tomorrow. If you want to join the mastermind, we would love to have you in there. All you got to do is go to beyondbroke.com and use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, #1, and then MO like Mary Oscar gets you the first month for $2. They're in the group. Month to month, no contract, cancel anytime. Try it out, see if it fits. We would love to see you in there. We do more in real life events than any other crypto community that I'm aware of, aside from maybe Crypto Mondays. Shout out to Lou, who runs that deal. And yeah, that's where we're at. That's where the macro is. Thank you guys for taking the time out of your Monday to come hang out with me and ask great questions. I wish you guys a wonderful week. God bless, and we'll see you on the next one.